What is going on, everybody? John Pepper here with Andrew Cooper. Welcome into the Quick Out Fantasy Football Show. It is NFL Week 14. Coop, my buddy, final week for many for the start of the fantasy football playoffs kicking off here this week. Some industry leagues already in their fantasy football playoffs here, so hopefully you prepared for the two teams that are still on a bye here. Thanks, Roger Goodell, with your scheduling, and you're ready to go here for this week, Coop.
Yeah, I actually have a league that I hate even more than just his playoffs starting now, and I've been trying to get it changed, and everybody else seems to like it. What are your thoughts on 2-week playoffs? Basically, the idea behind it, of course, is that 1 week is just too small of a sample size, and you do a 2-week matchup, and that really gives you a better idea who's the better team. But in my experience, it just messes everything up. And the playoffs start this week for that because you need to have an even number of weeks. So I don't know, John. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I think the 2-week final certainly makes sense if you want to see what the best teams are over the course of it. But I also think it all depends on the number of teams in your league as well for that sort of formatting. How many teams are going to get into playoffs? When you're going to start the playoffs and all that other good stuff. So,
I don't even want to get into that because this league is crazy. It's 20 teams
oh yeah,
with 2 leagues though, and you get relegated if you're into the B league, and all the money goes into one pot, but the top league gets more money. So like, there's a whole thing to this. This league is wild. I do like that part. That part is fun. The 2-week playoff though, I'm out on that, brother.
yeah, I'm with you for sure there. I'm trying to also think. Let's see, what are the other kind of formats? I've been proposing in a league, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Scoop, for playoff formatting. And this maybe takes a little bit of pen and paper, which is why it doesn't end up getting done. But once you get into the fantasy football playoffs, no longer should it be a head-to-head contest, but it should be a points race. So, because why be the team that has the second most points scored in a week, and you lose your matchup to the leader when you had the second best team in the playoffs that week? Like for me, I'd rather the playoffs just be basically a points league once you get into the highest scoring teams to the final 3-4 weeks of the season in the playoffs are the ones that win your championship. Take the head-to-head luck factor completely out of it at that point.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It all boils down to whether you want to keep the spirit of the game, because that's a spirit of the game thing, right?
Right.
So if you want to have, if it's a big money league and you want to reward what's fair, then you get into all the matchups versus the median and having payouts every week and all that stuff.
Yeah.
If you want to just keep the original spirit, then keep it that way. But I'm for it, man. I'm down for that kind of stuff where it switches over to Roto at that point because
Yeah.
I mean, how many times has a team lost in the first round to the highest scoring team when they were the second highest scoring team, and then they were a wagon the
And
rest
then
of
they're
the way.
done. Yeah, then they're done. Right. So,
Yeah.
so for me, once you do the work, I'm a proponent of points league and roto leagues. Anyways, I don't really like head to head. I get the head to head aspect from a social standpoint. It's fun. You get to go up against your buddies. You get to kind of have that sort of back and forth. But there are a lot of times where head to head you find yourself with points for, and those teams aren't in the playoffs because of just the unluckiness of their scheduling. I'd rather play in points leagues. I'd rather play in roto leagues and let my team dictate where I land in the standings. So, if I could figure out a way to get the playoff formatting to switch to a points league after the fact, I'd be happy with that as too.
Yeah, I feel you on that. Well, anyway, why don't we stop rambling about formats? Let's get into the slate. Let's talk a little football. We got people popping in. Toronto Dave in the chat. People are trickling in here. So
Yep.
why don't we get? Is there any big news we need to hit on before we get into matchups and stuff
Well,
here?
I mean, obviously we saw Trevor Lawrence go down with the ankle injury there in that matchup against the Bengals. We have to figure out, what's the status of Lawrence. The report was he has a high ankle sprain. Is he going to miss time? Now, with this high ankle sprain, he's going to be able to play through the high ankle sprain. And what does that do now for the fantasy football outlook? In that same game, Christian Kirk tears his groin, or I think it was, or some sort of season-ending groin injury that's going to require surgery. How does that now reshape the target pecking order for the Jacksonville Jaguars? Is Parker Washington someone you should be looking to pick up in waiver wire, Scoop? I mean, you look pretty good in that game, having to fill in Zay Jones, Evan Ingram, Calvin Ridley, all getting bump up there. So the Jacksonville offense, from an injury standpoint, potentially lost two big pieces. Definitely lost one big piece. Like, what's your reaction to that?
Yeah, so Christian Kirk is done. My guess, I mean, I haven't really seen the full details, but it sounds like a sports hernia, which if they're going to, like when they say groin surgery, usually what they do is they put in this like surgical mesh. The bad news is he's done for the year. The good news is those guys, that surgery, when you come back from it, you're like ready to rock and roll. Like Marshawn Lynch had his best season ever. So I'm not worried about Christian Kirk in Dynasty. For Trevor Lawrence, it's kind of interesting that even if it's a really bad, so the worst possible high ankle sprain is actually it torques your leg so bad that the bone actually breaks. That's what happened to Tony Pollard last year. That would end his season. There's a version of it where you can have something called tightrope surgery. You've heard
Yeah.
of it, John? And that one you can come back in 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, Jalen Hurts and Tua, I believe, both had it in college and came back and played that season. So if it's that bad and they act quickly, and this team can keep the ship afloat 4 to 6 weeks from now in real playoffs,
Yeah.
he'll be back, or if it's just, he can recover on his own, then he could be back. But we saw what happened with Michael Thomas the year he tried to do that. Darren McFadden, you can have crazy setbacks.
Yeah, the Patriots wanted Mac Jones to have that a couple years ago, and he wouldn't do it, right? They wouldn't do the tightrope surgery there.
Because he saw what happened with his teammates, where it is a very invasive surgery. It's crazy. Yeah. They put like a cord. When they say tightrope, they actually do put like a cord in your leg, which is, I don't know if I like that.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, for fantasy playoffs, that basically takes Trevor Lawrence out of your plans. Yeah. Hopefully you'll have a backup. The Tank Dell injury was the other big one. He had the broken fibula there, unfortunately. Ending his rookie season, had looked great. Nico Collins went out and just had a monster game in that one after the fact. But now what does that look like for you with Tank Dell out? Does Noah Brown now become an immediate add in fantasy football for you?
I mean, really answers our questions, because we had the question all year long. You've had Nico out for stretches. You've had Robert Woods out. You've had Noah Brown out. You've had Tank Dell out. So we never really had all the guys on the field at the same time. And for the last couple of weeks, I've been asking, what does that look like? What does that look like? We'll never know, right? Because we thought that Noah Brown would be splitting with Robert Woods, but he's not going to. So, yeah, I mean, based on the monster games Noah Brown's had, I'm getting him in there. And, it doesn't really move the needle much in Dynasty, because I don't know if these guys are stars. I think CJ Stroud is a star, and I think Nico Collins is a very good player, but I think it's really CJ Stroud moving the needle. So with a guy like Noah Brown, that's a guy I'm looking to trade in Dynasty. I'm looking to trade him because I'm sure this organization looks around and says, look, if CJ Stroud is elevating this guy to this level, what if we get a third guy in here who's really great? Now we can steamroll the entire league. So moving him, holding on to Tank and Nico.
Agreed. Before we get into our game-by-game breakdown, we're going to talk about the Thursday Night Football game. Let's talk a little sleeper picks here. Those of you who haven't already downloaded the Sleeper app, which I'm sure you have, you're already playing your fantasy football leagues over on the Sleeper app. But have you checked out the Sleeper HQ picks yet? Scan that QR code from your mobile device or from your mobile device. Go to fantasyfarm.com/sleeper. Use promo code VAULT3 when you make your first deposit, and you'll get a deposit match up to $100. Coop and I are going to give you our Thursday Night Football Sleeper HQ picks of the week. Coop, we got a free pick of the day here that we can take advantage of over on Sleeper right now?
Yes, they've got they call it the discount. Pick on sale is what they call it over there. So check for the pick on sale. I believe that once you use it once, you can't use it again. So the week you use it, go all in on it, right? So this week you can do Najee Harris 0.5 rushing yards. So if he gets 1 rushing yard, you hit on this one. I think that's a pretty good one. So yeah, you can go for that one. I'm also going to throw in my pick, which I'm saying Ezekiel Elliott anytime touchdown over 0.5 touchdowns. And here's the thing: you can do rushing if you want, but I don't think, and they give you a little bonus, right?
Yeah.
But I don't personally think it's a big enough bonus to just do rushing. I'd rather have the receiving in there, because Zeke has been getting dialed up a lot of screens lately, and he's actually looked okay on those. So there's a real possibility they get to like the 7 or 8 yard line, dial up a screen, he plunges it right in. I want to make sure I have that available to me. So I'm going with that one. The Pittsburgh Steelers are a good defense. The one thing you can do is run on them. They let up 121 yards per game running the football, and if only one guy's running the ball, we're liking Zeke. So I like Zeke in all formats. I definitely like him on Sleeper. 0.5 touchdowns. Give me more on that one.
I like that a lot. I also like his rushing yards. If you want to take the more on that one as well, with no Ramondre Stevenson, I think it's 58.5. We know how bad the Steelers are against the run. But for my pick here, we're going to go a big multiplier on this one. Mitch Trubisky less than 0.5 passing touchdowns. Trubisky's going to be in for Kenny Pickett here. And the Patriots defense has allowed 10 or fewer points now in 3 straight weeks. They've only allowed 1 passing touchdown during those 3 games as well. Tommy DeVito actually threw the touchdown. They held Justin Herbert without a passing touchdown last week. They held Gardner Minshew without a passing touchdown 2 weeks prior here. You're getting a big boost with the Trubisky less than a touchdown here. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Patriots defense once again steps up on this one. So give me Trubisky less than the half a touchdown for a pretty big multiplier. If yours hits Coop and mine, we're looking at like 5+X on a 2-picker here.
Right.
Some good odds over on Sleeper HQ. So again, scan that QR code here on the screen and go to fantasarm.com/sleeper from your mobile device and sign up for Sleeper HQ picks today with that promo code VAULT3.
Right. Sneak that Najee one in there. Now it's a 3-pick, but it's really just a 2-pick, right? You get the freebie. So get that going. And I will say this, Pat Freiermuth is probably the biggest threat to score a touchdown. Patriots have only let up 1 touchdown to tight ends all year. They've only let up like just over 400 yards. They're honestly in my rankings, because I do my own rankings where I factor in personnel, I factor in DVOA, I factor in points against, all those good things. They're a top 5 defense versus the tight end. So the big threat to score there, maybe not as big of a threat. And I think that's why the over-under for this game is the lowest that we've seen in 30 years.
Yeah, 30 years now? Has it gone under 30 yet?
It's 30 and a half, which is as crazy. This is how crazy to the people out there. To put it in perspective, the over-under for this game is slightly lower than the over-under for the game when the Saints started Taysom Hill against the Broncos and the Broncos started Kendall Hinton. It's lower than that. That's crazy. How gritty this game is. So yeah,
defense have been really good. So I mean, we'll see what comes of it. But and we know how bad their offense is. Taking under on a 30 total seems crazy, but it's almost very much in play here. So let's talk about that game. Thursday Night Football. Steelers are giving 6 in a 30.5 total. It almost makes you want to take the Pats. Honestly, we don't think they're going to be giving up any touchdowns. Zeke, the starting running back, nowhere. Ramondre Stevenson, Mitch Trubisky, and at quarterback. Due to the injury there to the Steelers starter Kenny Pickett. Bailey Zappi started last week, looked better than Mac Jones, but not great. Maybe we'll see some Malik Cunningham because Bill kind of got grilled about not using him last week. I mean, what's your overall thoughts and takeaways here, Pat Steelers?
I swear, Bill Belichick, like once he sees people getting excited, he just takes it off the table. Like he was probably going to use Malik Cunningham and then saw all the articles and all the buzz and was like, you know what?
Right.
Screw him.
I hate fun.
I hate fun. Yeah. So for me, I actually am willing, like this game, when you have a 30-point over under, you really have to pick and choose who you're going to actually utilize, right? Like we'll make a showdown lineup. It's going to be gross. But for me, like from the Patriots, the only player I'm interested in using in fantasy football, well, I guess there's 2. There's Zeke Elliott, because he's probably going to have the full workload. And then the Patriots defense, if I need a defense, I'm willing to use them. On the Steelers side, that's where it gets more dicey because they have a lot more assets that have been relevant for fantasy football. Right. Like Najee versus Warren, normally we'd say, yeah, start them both. In this case, the Patriots are team number 2 in DVOA versus the run. So I don't know, man. If I have other options, this is the week. We've been saying start both of them, either one, for the longest time. This week, I'm kind of saying start neither if you can avoid it. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Obviously, this late in the season, you may not have all the depth here. Elliott may be the most appealing play, just given sort of the workload that he's now going to find himself getting.
Sure. For sure. I'm in on that. And my question for you is like Deontay Johnson. So we've got one in the chat here. Folks, we're definitely going to hit on your questions, so get them in there. It helps us out if you can ask them once we're on a game. That way it doesn't interrupt the flow of the show. We want to break down the games for the people that are just hanging out watching. We also want to answer your questions. So for instance, Michelle comes in. She says, hey, rank these players. Deontay Johnson's part of this game. We can use it in the context of the show. So I say, hey, John, speaking of Deontay Johnson, how would you rank these players in half PPR? Amari Cooper with Joe Flacco. Amari Cooper, if he plays.
As I say, Amari Cooper dealing with a head injury, right?
Right. So. But if he's cleared for concussion, it's not like a hamstring or anything. If he's cleared, then we don't discount him from where we normally would have him. So let's assume he's cleared. Amari Cooper, Deontay Johnson, Jerome Ford.
It's probably the 2 Browns and then Deontay Johnson for me. I put the running back probably ahead of Cooper, but it all depends on his health, I think, here for sure. Browns at home against Jacksonville. I know Jacksonville's a little tougher to run against, but wasn't too much of an issue last week with Joe Mixon. Right. Could certainly see Jerome Ford continue to find some value there. I know Kareem Hunt had a better day, but trusting Ford, I think long term is still the way we find our success with Cleveland. What are your thoughts, Coop?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing with the Jaguars. So there are some teams like the Titans, for instance, they're very good versus the run, like top 3 or 4 in DVOA, and they're also allowing the fewest receptions to running backs of any team. The Jaguars, that's where we get our fantasy points. That's where Joe Mixon got all his points. The first catch of the game went for 28 yards. The Jaguars are, I believe, the number 1 team in DVOA versus the run. Either one or they were way up there. They're definitely top 5, but they're letting up the most receptions to running back of any team in the league, and that's why Kamara and all these guys do fine. Jerome Ford routinely runs more routes per week than Kareem Hunt. I think he's going to be just fine in fantasy. Not amazing, because to be amazing, you need to run and catch passes, but especially in PPR, I think he's going to be just fine. So I'm with you. I rank him the way you have it.
Yep, agreed. Let's move on to maybe some more exciting matchups here. Baltimore versus at home this week against the Los Angeles Rams. Ravens giving 7.5, a 40 over and a half over under here. Kyren Williams, again, last week had a tough matchup, came through for fantasy managers. He's just matchup proof, I guess, at this point. Not that you were going to bench him in seasonal anyways, but I think even in DFS now, is just going to continue to be a valuable play. He's too much involved in this offense to be ignored.
Exactly. I mean, it's the Rams have become an easy team to evaluate for fantasy football now that they are rotating Tutu Atwell and Demarcus Robinson. Now I just say, don't worry about it. Austin Trammell, I don't care about those guys. You start Kyren, you start Puka, you start Kupp, right? Like, if you have better players than Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, then you're feeling great right now. You know what I mean? So those guys I'm comfortable with. The one I want to ask you about, John, is Matt Stafford. Where do you land on him this week? The Ravens have been tough versus the pass. Is he still like back-end QB1, or is he more of a guy that you only start in Superflex?
No, I'm still playing him as a QB1 here. I mean, why go away from the way he's been producing right now? And the offensive weapons are legit. As long as Kupp and Nacua are going to continue to be healthy, and Kyren making the impact that he's making in the passing game as well, you have to consider Matthew Stafford, and regardless of the matchup. I mean, he played the Browns last week and looked pretty good. So I'm perfectly fine running him out there against Baltimore.
So I need to move him up in my rankings then. So I have him way too low. So let me start with guys that I have just below him. You start Stafford over Flacco. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
You start him over Geno Smith.
Yes.
Over Jameis Winston.
Yes.
Over Josh Dobbs.
Yes.
Over Baker Mayfield.
Who's Tampa Bay playing this week?
Falcons.
Yes. Still going to play Stafford.
Over Gardner Minshew.
Yes.
Over Jordan.
They're going to run too much against.
Yeah. Over Jordan Love.
Probably.
Over Russell Wilson.
No, Russell's the cover of my quarterback this week.
Okay. Justin Fields, Jared Goff. Probably those guys ahead, right?
I might play him over Goff. The running upside for Fields makes him too appealing.
Okay. And then one more real quick. CJ Stroud against the Jets.
No, I play Stroud still.
Okay. So based on what you just said, you would have him ranked in my rankings 12. I'm going to rank him 13. But
okay. Yeah.
So there you go. I guess it makes absolute sense. On the other side, Ravens, I mean, you're starting Lamar Jackson. Isaiah Likely is in a absolute smash spot this week. There's only a couple teams. There's tight end is tough for matchup wise, right? For me, and I tweeted this out earlier, there's a lot of teams that are just kind of middle of the pack, and I don't really factor the matchup into what I'm doing in my rankings. There are a couple teams at the very top and at the very bottom that we definitely worry about, right? So the tough teams that I definitely factor into my rankings are the Browns, the Titans, the Giants, and the 49ers. Those teams are top in points against, top in DVOA. They have the personnel. The matchups are bad. On the other side, there are three that I move guys up if they're playing. If they're playing the Bengals, for sure. If they're playing the Broncos, of course. And these Rams have their bottom 3 team in both points against and DVOA week in, week out. It doesn't matter who it is, they're producing. So yeah, Isaiah Likely smashed this week. I might rank him as high as 6 or 7, to be honest. So
I like it.
Yeah, I got to ask you one last one before we move on from this game.
We do have some questions about this game too.
Let's get to some questions. Well, let me ask you, just pick a name, no analysis. Just give me a Gus Edwards or Keaton Mitchell if you had to start one.
Edwards.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Which is kind of similar to the question we just got. Baltimore, Gus Edwards or Alexander Madison in a half-point PPR. Where do you go there, Coop?
I'm going to go – man, that's a tough one. let me see how I have that set up here. I have Madison ahead just
Yeah.
because I'm worried. I think I go Madison.
I would
'Cause
play Madison against the
right.
Raiders this week.
I'm just worried that like they are Gus needs the touchdown. That's the thing because they are mixing Keaton Mitchell in and just enough
Yeah.
that it's like he needs that touchdown because he's not going to get enough juice otherwise.
Yeah, I like Madison against the Raiders here this week, Gabe. It's where I'm going. Then Britt mentioning that the game total in this one has already dropped 4 points for between Baltimore and the Raiders, the Rams since it opened. So we'll see. We'll see how that one continues to sort of shape itself out there.
What's up with that? Why is that the case? Because I've seen it. I've seen a lot of them drop for
What's
wet.
our weather look like in Baltimore this week? I guess that's something to look
Are
at.
they impacted by that? Pretty
Britt,
much.
Britt did message me that we have our first weather weekend here, so
Yes.
maybe that's a game that is impacted by the weather.
Yeah. So, folks out there, apparently the Great Lake region is about to get crushed with a storm. So, all these games that are in proximity to the Great Lakes the over unders are dropping off a cliff. The
So
Browns.
current projected forecast from our guy Kevin Roth there, it's going to rain a lot on Sunday in Baltimore. The worst may end up coming after the game, but even in that scenario, we should be playing with light rain with wind gusts of 15 to 20 miles an hour.
That's it right there.
And
It's
that's
the
just right
winds.
now. So he's saying that obviously if the system comes sooner, then they could get hit a little bit harder. So
It's the wind. Yeah, it's that wind, man, because the wind is the big killer. So any of those games in that region, the Browns game is over there. The Jets game in that region, be very careful. We'll talk about that when we get to those games.
we will. Let's move on over to the next one here. Colts Bengals. Bengals getting 1.5 at home, 41 total. Browning looked good. I don't know if that's something we can continue to trust week after week, but it looked good. Throwing those passes, Jamar Chase made a bunch of big plays. We know that obviously Joe Mixon had himself a pretty good day as well. But I'm looking at Zach Moss in this spot. It should just be a Zach Moss all day here, especially if the weather in that game in Cincinnati isn't great either for throwing.
Yeah, I have Moss ranked incredibly high in this one. It looks like that one might be far enough south that it's not super impacted. But yeah, we're loving Moss. Josh Downs and Alec Pierce, you're definitely starting Michael Pittman. Pierce and Downs, you got to see who else you have. Get your Downs questions in now because he's just not quite playing all the snaps. And I'll tell you this is just the waste of a great matchup because the Colts really don't have a tight end that they use. This week, the tight end snaps, 4 different guys each played either 12 or 13 snaps. No one played more than 13. No one played less than 4 running routes. Nobody ran more than 13 routes. Nobody ran less than 12. So just a huge mess for fantasy football. I can't trust any of those guys. Kyron Williams, Will Mallory, Mo Alley Cox, like Andrew Ogletree, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. It's hard to know with that side of the things. You just know where they're going to throw the ball as the top end side there. Any other takeaways in Colts Bengals here?
I mean, like I wanted to ask you,
Sure.
like obviously you're starting Jamar Chase no matter what. Like he's
Yep.
just too good with the ball in his hands. T. Higgins or Tyler Boyd, can you do anything about it? I mean, can you start those guys?
I mean, you're still playing Higgins if you have him. I don't think you're playing Boyd at this point, but I mean, unless you're needing a wide receiver 3 flex play, then maybe. But you still have to play Higgins. I know Boyd's been decent, but Higgins is the better upside play. So I mean, it all depends on what your roster looks like, really.
Okay.
I'm not definitely not sitting Higgins. Boyd, it would depend on what else you have there.
Yeah, I'm not sitting Mixon either. Warning people to be careful with Tanner Hudson. Last 2 weeks he's only run 12 routes and 10 routes. Like I know they dial up plays to him, but the ceiling is very low for a guy that's only running like a very short number of routes. So be careful with Tanner Hudson. Maybe a DFS
They
play,
just
but
throw to him. I mean, that's just the thing.
that's the thing, right? But it's like, but he's guys like that. They're sure they consistently can get 2 to 4 targets, but he's never going to get 7, 8, 9, 10. So for me, it's hard to rank him super high.
Agreed. Bucks Falcons here. Falcons to give it 2.5 and a 39.5 game total here. Mike Evans continues to Mike Evans things every single week. I tout Mike Evans every single week. He's like under 10% in DFS for no reason whatsoever. Man is an absolute monster. Continually just going to go back to the Mike Evans week after week after week. I don't even care.
Yeah, I'm out on that. Did I say Kyron Williams is a Colts tight end? I thought I said Mo Alley Cox.
You were talking about the Bengals backup running back there.
Chase Brown?
No, it was did you mean I didn't hear you say Kyron Williams. I
I
thought you were
said
talking
I
about
said Kylan Granson. Kylan Granson.
okay.
Maybe I said Kyron Williams instead of Kylan Granson. So yeah,
Maybe.
Kylan Granson. Sorry about that. Kylan Granson, Mo Alley Cox. Now my mind is
I thought you were
shredded.
talking about
Will Mallory
Trayvon
and
Williams.
Andrew Ogletree.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the game we're talking about. What are we talking about?
Sure.
Bucks Falcons.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mike Evans is a Hall of Famer. And I hate to call it clickbait, but I just feel like people that are like they see an opportunity like this to say Mike Evans isn't a Hall of Famer so that they can get attention and stuff. But like he's got the same stats as Calvin Johnson and more touchdowns than Calvin Johnson. Like, and Calvin Johnson was a unanimous first ballot Hall of Famer. Calvin Johnson's played 9 years. He's played 10 years. People talk about peak and this and that. Like, look around. There's guys that are in the Hall of Fame that had long careers. There's guys that had very short careers. Like Emmitt Smith and Terrell Davis are on two opposite ends of the spectrum. A guy like Mike Evans that comes out and has 10 straight years of 1,000 yards, that's a Hall of Famer. It doesn't matter what happens next. And you know what? Clickbait away if you want. And
Mike Evans is again coming in under 10% in DFS this week. So
silly, man. They don't get it.
Just gonna keep playing him. I'm just gonna keep putting him in my lineup. So that's perfectly fine by me. He had 6 for 82 and a touchdown against Atlanta in week 7. So happy to just go back, and they didn't move his price. It's the same price he was last week there as well. So like, why not? Why not keep plugging in a guy that's going to give you 20 plus almost every week with touchdown upside, multi-touchdown upside at that. What do you feel about the rest of the Tampa Bay offense though?
Yeah, I mean, Chris Godwin has been very difficult to trust. Everyone thought Baker Mayfield was going to like throwing to him, but no, he likes chucking it up to Evans. So hard to trust him. And then Cade Otton all year, Cade Otton has, at least got a reception every game. And in the last stretch of games, he's gotten at least like 4 or 5 targets, a lot of reception. He even got 9 targets in a game. He had a stretch of 6, 9 targets. The 1 week we need him to step up with all the injuries, with all the bye weeks, he lays a goose egg. So now it's difficult to trust a guy that, this player over the last 7 weeks, no one has a higher route participation than Cade Otton. Depending what source you check, maybe George Kittle is right there with him, but almost 90%. Like, so I'm still going to trust Cade Otton personally. The Panthers are a difficult matchup for tight ends. They are one of the teams that, the DVOA for them is suggests that they are better than what the numbers have been. So yeah, be careful with the Panthers. I'm still in on Otton. On the Falcons side, some interesting stuff going on. We're just when we thought we could finally give up on Kyle Pitts and just say, you know what, it's not happening this year. He goes out and runs 90% of the routes, gets nearly 30% target share, gets the usage that we always thought he could have and wanted him to have. And there's one more week before playoffs, so we get to see one more week to see if maybe we can trust this guy. So Kyle Pitts, I'm not dropping him just yet. I don't really have him in a lot of spots, but hang on to him just to see. Maybe something flipped there. And
good price in DFS, and he's been getting some decent targets lately. Obviously the Saints game aside, but like he had 3-4 straight weeks of 5 or 6 targets, had 8 last week. It's just about the conversion. And at the tight end position, I mean, what's your other options here, right? Like, it's not like on your seasonal team, you probably have a better, consistent week-to-week start. He's a good price in DFS this week as well.
He's quietly tied for the 7th most targets of any tight end. He just hasn't scored. He hasn't scored. He hasn't been efficient with them. He's got more targets than George Kittle, Jake Ferguson, right? Like Dalton Schultz, all these guys. I mean,
we got another 18 carries from Bijan Robinson last week, which is nice to see. Wasn't efficient with them, but just kind of overall good to see. I want to talk about the running back on Tampa Bay quickly. Last 5 weeks, carries for Rachaad White. 2015 had 9 against San Francisco in that game. They were never in. 20 and 20. So, I mean, the workload for Rachaad White has been there, and he's a big proponent of their catching game, passing game as well. He had 6 catches against Atlanta in that week 7 matchup. So I do like Rachaad White a lot this week here as well.
There just aren't enough good running backs with a full role for me to not rank this guy like top 15 every week. Even before, it's just like you look around and say, okay, am I going to rank half? Like obviously there were a couple backfields where you can take both the Lions running backs and put them ahead and both the Dolphins. But like at a certain point, like, am I going to start Rachaad White or just throw a dart at a Bears or Ravens or even a Bills running back? So yeah, Rachaad White's he's in all my lineups, man. You can't, unless your team's a wagon, you don't have 3 running backs that are better than Rachaad White. You don't.
I agree with you. Next game, you mentioned Lions. Lions at the Bears here, giving 3 a 41.5 game total. Another game here that may be impacted by the rain. revenge game a couple weeks ago. We talked about it. David Montgomery did have a good day in that matchup. Both running backs actually found the end zone. Jahmyr Gibbs had the big receiving game in that one as well. Use both running backs. I have no problem using both of those guys here this week, especially if it's going to be windy or rainy in that matchup.
Right, and we talk about like some people just totally take the revenge game stuff and they throw it out the window. You know what? There are teams that go in on that stuff. And this team, we watch these two running backs have a conversation on the field about who's going to score the touchdown. Confirmed by Jahmyr Gibbs that David Montgomery let him score the touchdown. Going into Chicago, if anyone's letting anybody score touchdowns, it's going to be Monty, right? I saw a team the Cowboys activated Noah Fant's cousin just so he could be active against his cousin in a game. Like they do these things sometimes. I watched the Steelers throw to Deontay Johnson. All they do is take a knee to end the game. Sorry, not Deontay Johnson, to Antonio Brown. All they do was take a knee to end the game, and they threw to Antonio Brown just to keep a streak going for him. So this stuff is real. They do care about this stuff. If they're going to give a touchdown to anybody, it's going to be Monty. So I have Monty ranked ahead of Gibbs in every format except full PPR because, Gibbs, of course. But with the Lions, obviously you're starting Laporta, you're starting Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jamison Williams, are you even stashing him, or is he just in the scary zone and we're just dropping him at this stage?
I mean, he's scary. He scored last week, right, on the end around or whatever it was. So, I mean,
he looked fast on that play.
They do throw some downfield shots to him, but he's not a startable guy. And I think you stash him in case someone gets hurt. But otherwise, it's very difficult on a week-to-week basis to trust him, knowing that Amon-Ra St. Brown, knowing that Laporta are really the top two targets on that team. For the Bears side of stuff, I mean, they're back home here. Running back situation certainly a bit in flux. He had Fields back. He had one good game, one bad game. Got Cole Kmet, DJ Moore. Passing against the Lions are certainly the way to attack them. Do you have any feels on the Bears offense in this week?
Yeah, I have a lot of feelings. Number one, I will start DJ Moore just because his upside's so high that you can't afford to miss out on it. So you're going to start him. Fields, you start him for the rushing ability. The negative feelings come from the running backs and from the tight end. So at running back, man, Matt Eberflus was asked why Roschon Johnson played more than Khalil Herbert, and he said it was because, and get this, he said it was because Roschon had a better week of practice. That is the worst thing that I could possibly hear for fantasy football, because he basically sits there and just kind of watches these guys and decides quietly to himself or to the other coaches, one of these guys is going to play more than the other, and we have no idea how to predict that. That's terrible for fantasy football. So the running backs scare me for sure. Roschon played 74% of the snaps, and Khalil Herbert only played like 18, 19, something like that. So that's horrible. And Cole Kmet is one that if you have nothing else, you put him in there. And I don't mind him on a weekly basis, but just keep in mind that this guy will randomly block on 7 or 8 pass plays. In 4 different games, they've asked him to stay in and block on 6, 7, and 8 pass plays. Twice on 8, actually. And against the Raiders, they asked him to stay in and block on 8 pass plays with Max Crosby, and he didn't catch a single pass, right? Last week, they asked him to stay in on 7 pass plays. So some weeks this guy runs like every route. Some weeks, like last week, he runs like 60% of the routes. So Cole Kmet is very scary in in fantasy playoffs where you need to win every single week. Having a guy that could randomly just spend the day blocking is horrible. It's horrifying, man. And that's been the problem for the entire career for Tyler Higbee. If you look at Tyler Higbee and ask yourself, why does this guy randomly put up 0 points? It's pass blocking. So Cole Kmet, be very, very careful with him.
Sure. Next matchup here on the board, Panthers Saints. This one has a 37.5 game total. Saints are given 5.5. How are we feeling about Carolina's offense after the changeover there last week?
Yeah, there was, you never know what's going to happen, but some predictable things happened here. Miles Sanders, you can likely drop in your fantasy football leagues because he was a friend of Frank Reich, and obviously he played with Deuce Staley. Clearly, Chuba Hubbard got much more work than him this week in all phases of the game. So Miles Sanders was a friend of all the guys that got fired. Baby has been thrown out with the bathwater with him. The other thing is Jonathan Mingo, their rookie pick, they said, hey, you know what? We're not going to win this year. Let's see what this guy's got. 10 targets. So, hey, maybe that keeps going. Or maybe the scary thing for fantasy is, what if they just start doing live tryouts and they say, hey, you know what? We got a lot of looks at Jonathan Mingo this week. Let's see if, Terrace Marshall or DJ Chark. Let's find out who's going to be part of this team moving forward. So a little scary there. A little scary.
Right. Agreed. How about on the Saints side of stuff here? What are we thinking for this matchup? Jameis Winston at quarterback.
Jameis Winston. So it's I think there are some quarterbacks, and I would even extend this to Mitch Trubisky. Sometimes you're throwing in a guy that's never played in this league, and it looks horrible, right? Like
Mhm.
Malik Willis, it's not even a game. We
Right.
know Jameis Winston can play. We know Mitch Trubisky can play football, right? Like it might not be great. Jameis is just a different flavor from Derek Carr. Michael Thomas on Twitter was, tweeting all week during the game last week saying that Derek Carr sucks. He said in Jameis or God is with Jameis, and then he deleted his account. So he thinks Jameis Winston's flat out better than Derek Carr.
Mhm.
What we're going to see is increase for guys that have high ADOTs. This is good news for Chris Olave. Maybe good news for A.T. Perry. Not good news for Juwan Johnson, and not good news for Taysom Hill, because Derek Carr only threw 2 touchdowns over 20 yards the entire
Right.
year. He's dink and dunking the ball down to the goal line so Taysom Hill can score. That's not Jameis. Jameis is huck it, chuck it. So not ideal for Taysom Hill.
Yeah, I would agree with you, especially if they're not going to be deep into those red zones. Anybody that you're looking to add for receivers here for the Saints?
Nah, I think it's really just going to be Kamara, Olave, and most teams don't have 3, 4
Right.
fantasy relevant options. I have a league where I have a superflex, not superflex. Yes, sorry, superflex. I have a superflex league where I'm adding Jameis Winston because he made his way back to waivers. I added him. I had enough fab to get him, and I'm starting him. So, but I'm not going to start him in one QB
Sure.
league.
It's a 37 over under two. It's not like there's a ton of potential point scoring there.
Yeah,
Though I think a lot of that has to do more with the lack of the Panthers scoring upside than the Saints potential in the
sure.
spot. Jacksonville giving 9.5 to Cleveland. Does this one seem to make any sense to you here? 49. Do I have that right? Is Jacksonville giving 9.5 to Cleveland here?
That can't be right. It's not. Cleveland's favored by 3.
Okay, good.
And the over-under is 30.5. I don't know.
I don't
show
know. Yeah,
sheet.
I don't know where that one got copied over from. That I was like, that doesn't seem anything close. Maybe it's left over from last week.
I filled out the show sheet, but I am going to blame it on producer Sean Engel.
Okay.
If his father's the king, then he's the prince. The prince is to blame on this one, Sean. So
okay, well,
you got to fall on that sword.
There. I was like, that doesn't seem right at all.
It's not.
Yeah, so I'm looking at a 30.5 total with a 3-point spread on this one too. Do we have 2 games?
It's the weather. This one wasn't this. This one once it became clear that this was going to be like the supercell, whatever it is. I hope they come up with a fun name for it because that's always fun. But yeah, once that became clear, this one just dropped. They didn't even give us an over under to open. So yeah, 30.5, man, that's gross. So it's going to be and the thing with the Jags is you can't really run on them. So I expect a lot of short passes. Good for Jerome Ford. Maybe good for David Njoku. I know Joe Flacco does not like throwing short passes, so it'll be interesting to see how that looks. But could be rough. I mean, definitely not a Cedric Tillman game.
That's sure. And they're not great defenses to run against. So if you can't throw against them and you can't run against them, this could be another maybe no touchdown performance here in this one. Again, we got to wait on the news on Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, CJ Beathard stepped in and looked good, and he looked good at times when he was playing for the 49ers. So he's not a complete zero as a backup quarterback if he had to go out there and play. But Browns defense, as good as it is at home with the weather impact as well, tough spot in week 14 to not really have some core plays that you're used to plugging into your lineup as viable options. That might be where we're at.
Yeah, Evan Engram in this game is probably, because he's going up against the Browns that are by far the toughest defense for tight ends. He's probably going to have 12 targets, of which he'll catch 4, right? And then have 23 yards. So, which sounds about right for Evan Engram. A bunch of screens that he gets stuffed on, So Engram in full PPR, you might not have a better option, but I don't know, man. He finally got in the end zone last week on a play where he had to create everything, basically, and I just don't really see him having a lot of success here. I don't see anyone having a lot of success, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm with you there as well. This is going to be kind of an ugly game. Next games also might be a little bit ugly. Texans versus Jets. Jets getting 5.5 and 32.5 game total. Zach Wilson is your quarterback once again in New York, for better or for worse. He's sticking it back out there. Jets at home here. Tank Dell getting hurt last week for Houston. The top storylines in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, top storyline, we have Anime Dude in the chat making a great point. Texans now primed to make the playoffs with the Jaguars losing their quarterback. And we're definitely going to hit on the questions in the chat as many as we can. We're just going to try and get through the matchups real quick for you guys. So, yeah, I mean, with this one, rough that it's going to be bad weather, rough that the Jets corners are amazing. So the Jets are just not a conducive team to fantasy football because they have a terrible offense and an amazing defense and pretty good special teams. That's the worst combination for fantasy football possible. So, start Nico Collins where you have to. Start Steve. You probably don't have anyone better than CJ Stroud if you've been relying on Stroud. But, I'm probably not going to be starting in real leagues Robert Woods or Noah Brown or either of the running backs, to be honest. And then on the Jets side, you can start Breece Hall, you can start Garrett Wilson where you have to, and that's about it. That's about it.
That's really where you're at. Seahawks 49ers. 49ers are giving 10.5, 46.5 game total in this one. The 49ers obviously blowing doors last week. Everybody thought the Eagles were going to make that little comeback after they had the incident on the sideline with the head of security, and was it Greenlaw? Was that who it was that got kicked out of that game? And then the Philly goes down and scores, and then it was actually just over from there. The 49ers went down and just pummeled the Eagles from that point on. Deebo Samuel monster game. Purdy and now the MVP favorite this year. I mean, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and again, this is what I don't like with the MVP is that it's already a quarterback award, and it's supposed to be the most valuable player, which we should be able to do in a vacuum. But the NFL, in a lot of sports, honestly, lean into wins as a stat, and they lean into wins as a QB stat. So even though this team has the best left tackle in the league and the best running back in the league and the best fullback in the league and one of the best tight ends in the league and two of the best wide receivers in the league, they are saying that they also have this quarterback is also the best just because the team's very successful. I think it's fine. It's fair, but I think Jalen Hurts is more valuable just on or Tyreek Hill, another good example. Like Tyreek Hill should be in the mix. McCaffrey should be in the mix. Trent Williams. I think Trent Williams is flat out a better football player than Brock Purdy. Like Trent Williams is the best offensive lineman in the league. Why can't the offensive lineman be the best offensive player of the MVP? But enough of that rant. I've done that.
I was going to say, you're just trying to get an offensive lineman as an MVP.
I do want that. I just want half the kids out there.
Purdy's making great plays, man. I'm not taking anything away from him.
He's fine.
He's the leader of the team. Right. He's making the plays.
It's just I want to say that, like, personally, I just think that the MVP should be a guy that has a truly tangible impact. Like if you were to take Brock Purdy and put him on the worst team in the league, now that team is winning a bunch of games, right? And we'll never know, but I just feel like there's guys that have a bit bigger impact.
Sure.
For fantasy purposes, the 49ers are my favorite team to analyze because they use a fullback for so many snaps and they use second tight ends that never get the ball. So you start all four of the players. Five players. There's five players. You start them all. You start Purdy, you start Kittle, you start McCaffrey, you start Ayuk, you start Deebo. There you go. Easy team. Great team.
Agreed. And elite talent all across the board there as well. Minnesota Vikings versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Raiders are getting 40.5 game total. I got news that they will continue to use Dobbs as their quarterback. I didn't really think that was much of a discussion, kind of given the situation they have at the quarterback position, but nonetheless, they are sticking with Dobbs here. Is this the return week for Justin Jefferson, right? Potentially?
Yeah. I mean, it should be interesting. I hated the idea of him the coach coming out and saying, oh, yeah, we'll have to evaluate the quarterback position. It's like you traded for this guy. He wins the game for you outright, not knowing the plays. And then he has a bad game and you turn around and just crush his confidence and suggest you're going to use Jaron Hall or somebody. Like, come on, man. Stick by your guy, dude. Get him going. I mean, the negative reinforcement, hey, maybe he's a guy that responds well to negative reinforcement. Right. But for the most part, what you want to hear is, you know what? You had a bad game. It's okay. You're still the man, right? So I don't know. I'm still rooting for Dobbs. I think he's fine play in fantasy leagues, especially with the quarterbacks this week. Jefferson, if he plays, you put him in. TJ Hawkinson, you're starting him. KJ Osborne, I have no interest in. Addison is on the bubble guy. He's in that big group where let me know who you have and we'll tell you who you should start. But I don't love Addison, to be honest. And then on the Raiders side, you got Devontae Adams, who you're playing, Josh Jacobs, who top 5 running back in my rankings this week. Yeah. And then Jacoby Myers. Yeah. He's in the group. He's in the group with like Addison and those guys. Would you rather start Addison or Jacoby Myers?
With Justin Jefferson, without?
With Justin Jefferson.
Probably Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, I think so too. It's just the target consolidation is there. Like, the tight ends, Hooper and Meyer, aren't really doing anything. And that the two tight end sets keep Hunter Renfrow out of the game. So where the ball is going. It's going to one of 3 guys.
Yep. Anything on Michael Mayer?
I think in Dynasty, you're holding on to him. He's just right now, he's only running 60% of the routes because Austin Hooper, the GM wants the coach to get his money's worth or whatever it is. But once Austin Hooper's gone, now he should be in line for a full-time workload. And, maybe Devontae Adams will be gone too. Like,
Sure.
you never know. So next year we'll always reassess the situation. But in Dynasty, he's a buy low candidate because I think he's a talented player.
All right. Broncos Chargers here. Chargers given 2.5 to 43.5 game total. Chargers at home. Coming off a week where they didn't score any touchdowns against the New England Patriots. You have the Denver Broncos here. I had that matchup against the Texans last week. I have Russell Wilson on the cover of my quarterback coach for DFS. Again, I think this is a great spot for him. First time facing the Chargers this season for the Broncos offense. We know how bad they've been all season long. So it should be an interesting matchup to say the least. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I feel great about Javonte Williams, Cortland Sutton. I don't trust anybody else on the Broncos. I guess Russell Wilson. Yeah, like Russell Wilson in this matchup I'm in on. And then I like Herbert. Keenan Allen is obviously a star. Austin Eckler hasn't been playing well, but here's the thing. Like, people get so wrapped up with where they drafted guys. I see people that are disappointed about Travis Kelce. They're disappointed about Austin Eckler. Like, save the crying for if you lose, right? Like, if you're still in it and you're in the playoffs, Austin Eckler's in your lineup. Travis Kelce's in your lineup. So, I mean, no use whining. Travis Kelce still has the highest points per game of any tight end. And people are coming to me and they're like, oh my God. Like,
right.
It's like, dude, don't worry about it. Put him in your lineup. And sort it out at the end because you know what? How many times do guys come on at the right time? And then at the end of the year, we look back and say, not only did they give you the stats you needed and wanted, but you won your league. So save your whining for, January.
Sure. Yeah. And listen, nobody was really complaining about Austin Eckler when he routed off 3 straight weeks of 20+ fantasy points. But the last 3 weeks have been tougher matchups, and he's giving you some tough spots. This goes right back into a spot where it should be a favorable matchup for Austin Eckler. See if they can, get him the football. And then on your right, on the Broncos side, you mentioned Sutton, you mentioned Williams and Russell Wilson. That's basically where I'm plugging my chips in as well.
Real quick, I'll mention that Gerald Everett, I don't usually trust him, but in this matchup, it's not a bad spot start because it's a terrible defense. Just know that this guy doesn't play a full snap share. And Victor, when you talk about Evan Ingram, David Njoku, Goddard, Freiermuth, and Everett, if everyone's playing and healthy, I rank them Ingram 1, Goddard 2, then Njoku, Freiermuth, Everett. That's how I have them ranked.
Where are you on Quentin Johnson? Still had 5 catches on 7 targets last week. He had a monster drop in that game, though. Yeah. Drops continue to kind of plague the rook, but out there for snaps and getting targets.
Yeah, in Dynasty, he is squarely a hold. I'm not buying him, and of course you can't sell him with his value right now, so you're just holding. That's it. In redraft, Josh Palmer's window got activated. So if you need the bench spot for, like, say you really don't trust your quarterback, or you don't trust your tight end, or you don't trust your defense, and you want a second one, Quentin Johnston is in that category for me of, if you're not starting him this week, then you could probably drop him because I think
Josh Palmer gets activated for this week. He'll be the highest roster player in DFS. He's priced 3K.
No question. Yeah, they did not. The news didn't come out that his window opened, so they did not account for that. Same thing happened with Freiermuth when he got activated. Is that the pricing came out, and then later that day they said, "Oh yeah, this guy's going to play this week," and he was 2,500 on DraftKings.
Yeah. Yep. Next matchup here, the exciting matchup of the week. I guess there's a few of them, but for the main slate, Buffalo versus Kansas City. Kansas City at home, given 1.5 and a 48.5 game total here, Coop.
Yeah, it kind of stinks and we'll talk about it when we get to the Monday Night Football. But like, I just wish one of these, the 49ers Seahawks. I know that's a West Coast game. I wish that this Chiefs Buffalo game was either at 1 o'clock or prime time because they're both going to be on the same time. I don't know, kind of annoying, but
yeah.
I mean, people are coming to me with this narrative that Gabe Davis shows up for big games and this is going to be a big game for him. People forget that the game that he scored 4 touchdowns in against the Chiefs, he had 0 catches through a quarter and a half. And then Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, got a concussion and left the game. And then people were falling all over the ground and he scored 4 touchdowns. But until their best safety got hurt, he wasn't doing a damn thing. So I don't buy this narrative that this player all of a sudden is going to be like a big game king and have a crazy game. Like, over the last 4 weeks, this guy's played 93%, 98%, 88%, 96% of the snaps in the 4 games. In 2 of those games, he didn't catch a damn football, not one. So I don't trust that guy at all. If you want to use him in DFS based on some narrative that everyone is touting, go ahead. Right. But I'm not doing it. I'm starting Diggs. I'm starting Kincaid. I'm hoping that Dawson Knox, his snaps, if he does come back this week, come from Quentin Morris and Khalil Shakir, and they come from Trent Sherfield. So I'm hoping Kincaid's gonna be fine, but there's risk there, but there's not enough good tight ends. And then on the Chiefs side, you're starting Kelsey, you're starting Mahomes, you're starting Pacheco, you're starting Rashi Rice. And then I guess if you're doing DFS dart throws, are we doing Justin Watson again? Is that an every week thing, John?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why not. Howard Bender has MVS in his watch list as a dart throw this week. He's a min price 3K play. So dart throws against Buffalo, downfield shots for MVS. They obviously throw to him. There's a lot of min price guys in this Chiefs passing offense once you get past Rice, pretty much. So somebody's got to give there.
Yeah. All right. Let's hit the last couple games real quick.
We'll rapid fire some questions, and you and Ben are coming up next. Alarm Fantasy Football. So
we'll hit every question. We'll hit every question on that. I know we're not going to be able to get all the ones in the chat here. This show's got a specific format, so sorry, chat, on that one. But coming up right after this, me and Howard Bender will hit on every question in the chat. So copy and paste whatever you got, throw it into the next YouTube one. You can throw it in there before we even get in there, and we'll get to it. So sorry about that, but we'll do our best.
Yep. Throwing the link in the chat right now for you and Bender here coming up next. There's that. So you can just click that link, wait for it to start in 5 minutes. Coop and Bender getting you there. But what do you got here? Sunday Night Football, Eagles, Cowboys. Cowboys given 3.5, 51.5 total, Coop.
Yeah, I mean, finally, we don't have a, knock on wood, injured quarterback or something that makes this game stink, because this should be a great one. This is a huge one. Playoff implications all over it. Top seed implications all over it, because if the Cowboys win, now the Cowboys have quietly have an inside track to the top seed because of wins against common opponents, right? So kind of interesting there. So we'll have to see. They have to win out on a tough schedule. The Eagles have an easy schedule, so probably still would be the Eagles, but the Cowboys need to win this game to keep that dream alive, right? Sure. And for the most part, who you're starting. We like Brandon Cooks. We're out on Jalen Tolbert and the other guys. I mean, you're starting Smith. You're starting AJ Brown. So that easy teams here.
Agreed. Monday Night Football. We have two games: Packers, Giants, Titans, Dolphins. Packers, Giants. Giants are getting 6.5 at home. 37.5. Is Jordan Love good, Coop? I tweeted that out during that Sunday Night Football game last week. I mean, made some great throws. The receivers made some great plays for him. What's the evolution of Jordan Love here now as we head into Week 14?
I think that he has done enough. If he just keeps doing something similar to what he's done the last couple of weeks, I think he'll be the starting quarterback for this team next year. I know they had questions on it. I think he's been good enough. I think that he is a solid NFL caliber quarterback, to be honest. So I'm interested in Romeo Doubs. I'm interested in Jaden Reed. Tucker Kraft, if you must, but just keep in mind, the one thing the Giants do well is cover the tight end. They have Bobby Okereke. They have Xavier McKinney. It's not a good spot for Tucker Kraft. So just be very careful with that. On the flip side, I'm hoping Tyrod Taylor and Darren Waller get back for a late season boost for whoever might need a tight end out there. Besides that, you're basically starting Saquon Barkley, maybe doing a showdown slate dart at your guy, Jalen Hyatt, because he's the big play guy, right?
Agreed. And then Titans, Dolphins. Dolphins are giving 13.5. They're at home. It's 47 game total. Can anybody stop Tua and Tyreek Hill? I kind of wish this game was on the main slate because,
right. Yeah. I'm actually glad it's not, dude, because sometimes it just breaks the slate when you have these, a team like the Titans that are great against the tight end. They're great against the running back and terrible against wide receivers. It's like conditions are perfect for the Tyreek Hill Tua blow up. So the question is, I got to ask you, for FFPC lineups where you can only use one guy, would you start Tua or Tyreek?
Tyreek.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I'm with you. But yeah, Titans, I mean, Chigakonkwo is in the mix a little bit if you're desperate. Showdown slate possibility maybe. Besides that, you're starting DeAndre Hopkins, you're starting Derrick Henry, and that's it. So
agreed. All right, guys, that's it for today's Quick Out Fantasy Football Show. Go click that link. Get Howard and Coop coming up next. Alarm Fantasy Football will be back Sunday morning for everybody. 9 to 10, myself and Rid Flynn. Coop and I, 11 to 12, getting you all ready for Week 14 action. Of course, Coop's got Alarm Fantasy Football next couple days anyways. So check that out. We'll catch you all later. Good luck.